Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A warm welcome to every one of you, those here with us in the room and those joining us from afar. Tonight is the 16th of Safar and the opening night of a new road, the 5 nights of Arbaeen, the road to the 40th day. For those returning to us, welcome back. When we last gathered, it was the noon of Ashura, and the sky fell. Since then, the believing world has crossed something. 5 weeks of mourning, the long quiet between the killing and the 40th day. Tonight, Arbaeen calls us back, not to the field, but to the ones who walked off the field carrying everything. For 5 nights, we will follow the witness after the witness, all the way to the 40th. Please settle in and silence your phones. And if you're watching the premiere live, a quiet like as we begin helps these nights reach others who have been waiting for them. Now let us begin. Bismillah. We open, as we always have, by letting the Quran speak first. Please turn your attention to tonight's verses, chosen for the theme of the steadfast, the believing men and women who kept faith and were promised the great reward. Let us listen.
In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Indeed, the submitting man and the submitting women, the believing man and the believing women, the devout man and the devout women, the truthful man and the truthful women, the patient man and the patient women, the humble man and the humble women, the charitable man and the charitable women, the fasting man and the fasting women, the men who guard their chastity and the women who do so, and the men who remember God much and the women who do so. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. Quran, Sūrah al-Ahzab, the chapter of the Confederates, 33 verse 35.
Like her who unravels her yarn after it was strongly spun. Quran, Surah al-Nahl, the chapter of the bee, 16 verse 92.
And now a few couplets. Poetry chosen to carry tonight's theme into the heart, where prose cannot always reach. Let the words sit with you.
If Husayn is the master of witness, then Zaynab is the witness after the witness. One gave the truth its body, the other carried its voice when that body fell silent. Our Lady did not rise in the shadows, she stood in the open before the very face of tyranny, and spoke the truth without fear. She saw beauty, not despite the pain that could shatter mountains, but within that pain. She saw what unwavering faith, patience, and steadfastness could endure. We remain forever indebted to a woman who transformed apparent defeat into enduring victory, refusing to let martyrdom become the end of the struggle against oppression. The chain of witness did not end at Karbala. It did not end in Kufa. It did not end in Damascus. It must continue in every generation. Today, the call of Zaynab rests in our hands. The question is not whether history needs another witness. The question is whether we will answer her call.
We now come to the heart of the evening. It is my honor to invite our speaker, Shaykh Shabbir Hassanally, who will deliver tonight's sermon, The Witness After the Witness, on Sayyedah Zaynab and Imam al-Sajjad, peace and blessings be upon them, at the witness of the one who survives to carry the truth onward. A word on what is to come. The Shaykh's sermon will flow, without a break, into the Maqtal. Tonight, the caravan of the captives, and the sister who would not let the empire name what it had done, and will close with a supplication. So let us hold our stillness all the way through. I invite you now to receive Shaykh Shabbir Hassanally.
So I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayra al-maghdubi alayhim, wa lad-dallin. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله ولا أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. ما بعد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقينا وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Peace be upon you, O Aba Abdullah, and upon the souls who have gathered in your courtyard. Upon you from us all is the peace of God forever, for as long as we remain and as long as night and day endure. And may God never make this our last pledge to visit you. Peace be upon Hussein, and upon Ali, the son of Hussein, and upon the children of Hussein, and upon the companions of Hussein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we left him at noon on the 10th. We had walked the whole of Muharram towards a single hour. And when that hour came, when the horses were turned and sent across the body of our beloved Imam al-Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him, something in the telling itself broke. The voice that had carried us from the first night could not carry the trampling. We stood, last of all, at a grave with no shroud, in a field with no survivors that the empire could see, and the night came down. And then Arbaeen called us back. Between that noon and this night, the believing world crosses something. 5 weeks of mourning, the long quiet between the killing and the 40th day, the season in which grief is supposed to either harden into despair or be turned into something else. Tonight we have crossed it. We have returned, alhamdulillah. And we return not to the field. We have stood at the field. We will stand there again, but to the one who walked off the field carrying everything. Because the field was not the end of the story. It was the middle. Now there is a thing the chronicles tell, and the popular telling almost always rushes past, and it is the most important thing in the whole of the aftermath. At the very moment the empire thought it had finished, the testimony did not stop, it merely changed mouths. It passed from the brother who could no longer speak to the sister who would not stop. The master of witnesses fell silent at noon. By the afternoon, the witness after the witness was already at work. That is the subject of tonight. And I will tell you now, plainly, why it is the subject of our very lives, and not only of history. Because the meaning of a martyr, of a witness, is not finished at the moment of his or her death. It is finished, or it is betrayed, by what the living do with what the martyr gave. A witness who dies and is forgotten has been successful in the eyes of God, certainly. But ultimately, as far as the world is concerned, such a person has been defeated. The empire that killed him on this temporal plane has had the last word. But a witness who dies and is carried, is named, repeated, wept for, walked towards by 20 million bodies on a road every single year, year in, year out. That witness has won, and more importantly, what his message was has moved forward. And so this witness goes on winning. 14 centuries after the swords were sheathed, and the dynasty that drew them had turned to dust. The difference between these two outcomes, between Karbala as a massacre the empire won and forgot, and Karbala as the trial the empire has been losing ever since, that difference is a woman. Tonight we meet her, said Zaynab, the daughter of Imam Ali and of Sayyedah Fatima al-Zahra, peace and blessings be upon them both, the sister of Imam al-Husayn, the first teacher of post-Karbala Islam, the one who refused the mercy of dying so that the dead could keep speaking through her mouth, through her words. And before we begin, hear 2 verses one from the end of the Quran's account of who the righteous are, and one from the very beginning of the human story, because between them sits the whole theology of tonight. The first refuses, in the plainest possible language, to make witness a thing only men do. And this is from Surah al-Ahzab, the chapter of the Confederates, 33rd chapter of the Quran, verse number 35, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, "Indeed, the submitting men and the submitting women, the believing men and the believing women, the devout men and the devout women, the truthful men and the truthful women, the patient men and the patient women, the humble men and the humble women, the charitable men and the charitable women, the fasting men and the fasting women, the men who guard their chastity and the women who do so, and the men who remember God much and the women who do so. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and a great reward." Every station of faith in that verse is named twice, once for the man and once for the woman, the patient men and the patient woman, the truthful men and the truthful woman. Tonight, the witness is a woman, and the Quran named her station long before she was born. And the second verse is the oldest promise on earth, the covenant we opened on the second night of this series, the first yes any of us ever said. This is, of course, from Surah al-A'raf, the chapter of the heights, 7th chapter of the Quran, verse 172, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And recall when your Lord brought forth from the children of Adam, from their loins their descendants, and made them bear witness concerning themselves. Am I not your Lord? And they said, Yes, we bear witness." Yes, we bear witness. Every soul said it before it had a body. We tend to imagine that covenant being kept in some clean place, a heaven of light. Tonight, I want you to see it kept in the hardest place a human being has ever stood. In a ruined camp, by a woman in chains, holding other people's frightened children, standing over the unburied bodies of her brothers and her sons and her nephews. Yes, we bear witness. The covenant is not only spoken in eternity, it is kept on earth. And it was kept at the very limit of what a human heart can carry by said Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her. And the keeping of it began the moment the killing ended, at the body itself. So there is a station in our tradition that we do not name nearly often enough. We've spent 10 nights on the one who falls, the witness who gives everything at the sword and is gathered to his Lord. But there is another station, and in some ways it is the harder one, the station of the one who is left. Not the one who dies, the one who must stand up afterwards in the wreckage and carry what the fallen can no longer carry. The martyr's work is finished at the sword. The survivor's work begins at the sword, at the body. Think for one moment about what mercy would have looked like that afternoon for said Zaynab. Mercy would have been to die. Mercy in the conventional sense, I mean. Mercy would have been to die, to be allowed to fall beside her brother and khalas, be done. Everything she had built her life around was gone, seemingly. Her brother, her Imam, her nephews, her own 2 sons whom she sent out that very morning. The camp was burning behind her. To go on living was not the easy pathway. To go on living was the proverbial cross that she was asked to carry. And she carried it, not for herself, because she understood something that the empire did not. That if she died, the testimony died with her. The Karbala became just another massacre in a century full of them. She refused the mercy of dying so that the dead could keep on speaking. That is the theology of the survivor. And watch how she lived it from the very first second. The Chronicles tell us that as the enemy closed in on her brother, she did not stay hidden in the tents. She came out to a rise of ground from which she could see the field, and she watched. And our scholars preserve her cry, that cosmic cry that wished the order of creation itself would break rather than witness what it was witnessing. And she said, would that the sky had fallen upon the earth, would that the mountains had been crushed down upon the plain. And the references are, of course, in the write-up. And then, and this is the thing that I really want you to hold on to, she did not only grieve, rather she indicted. She called out by name to the commander of the army that was killing her brother, Umar, the son of Sa'd, saying, "O Umar, will Abu Abdullah be killed? Will Imam Hussein be killed while you stand and watch him?" And the man, the chronicles say, turned his face away and wept into his beard. But he did not stop his soldiers. But mark what just happened. The very first act of the survivor was not private weeping. It was public testimony, naming the guilty to his face. From the first second, hers was a voice of witness, a word of honesty in passing. The way that we've always tried to be honest, all of this series. The place she stood on is remembered in the devotional tradition by a beautiful but later name, Tilla Zaynabiyya, the Mount of Zaynab. This name, and I just wanted to make this very clear, this name is in later devotions. The event that she watched from a height is in the earliest sources. We love this name, but we tell you plainly what it is. The name came after. Then came the act that defines her. When the killing was over, she walked out onto that field, through the bodies that she had known, bodies that she had loved her entire life, until she reached the body of her brother, beheaded, trampled, stripped. And there the lamentation tradition has carried to us. She did not collapse. She knelt. She placed her hands beneath the holy body and lifted it a little toward the heavens. And she said, and again the references are all in the write-up, "O God, accept from us this sacrifice." Now, before we carry on, again, I need to be careful with you here because we do not dress devotion up as chronicle. This exact phrase is carried widely in our mourning tradition, and it is perfectly true to her station. But it is not one of those lines that we can trace to the earliest chains with certainty. So I give it to you as what it is. The words our tradition, our weeping, have placed on her lips for 14 centuries, because they are the only words equal to what she did. And what she did is unmistakable, whatever the precise wording. She refused to let the enemy name the event. Listen to the word that she used, or that our traditions knew that she must have. Qurban, an offering, a sacrifice brought near to God. Ibn Ziyad and Yazid had a name for what happened at Karbala. A rebellion put down, a victory, a problem solved. And standing over the worst thing that had ever happened to a human family, Said Zaynab reached past their name for it and gave it God's name. Not, "They have destroyed us," but rather, "O God, accept from us this offering." That is not denial. Denial looks away from the wound. She was looking directly at the wound with her hands underneath it. That is something far greater and far higher than denial. That is the supreme act of the survivor, to refuse the enemy the power to define what just happened. The empire may hold the field. It certainly does not get to hold the meaning. And then she did the thing that turned a defeat into a trial that is running to this very day. The order came to move the captives, the women and the children of the house of the Prophet, roped together in chains, driven out of Karbala towards Kufa, with the severed heads of the martyrs carried on spears at the head of the column. The empire intended this as a spectacle of humiliation, a victory parade if you like. They were going to march the family of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and righteous companions, through the cities of Iraq and Syria as proof that resistance against this regime was finished and that the regime had been successful. And Sayyid Zaynab took that victory parade and turned it into the opening statement of the prosecution. Understand the genius and the courage of it. The empire gave her a stage built to break her, and she stepped onto it and used it to break them. Every town the column passed through became a courtroom. Every crowd that gathered to gawp became a jury. The chains they bound her with became the pulpit that she preached from. By the time that caravan reached its end, the regime that had won the battle at noon on the 10th had begun to lose the argument for eternity. And it has been losing it every single year since then, and it will always lose it. The witness died at noon. By the afternoon, the witness after the witness was already standing. Imam Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him, gave the testimony with his body. Sayyid Zaynab made certain the testimony would be heard. Without her, Karbala is a tragedy the empire wins and history forgets. But with her, Karbala is the verdict the empire has never been able to overturn. And the trial she opened was held formally in 2 courts. First in the city that betrayed her family, and then in the very capital of the empire that had killed them. Please give me a loud salawat and we move on to the sermons of Kufa and Damascus.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
Now this is the part of the story that the night of Ashura itself left undone. You will remember, for those of us who walked the 10th night with us, that we deliberately stopped at its door. We said the longer telling, what was said before I saw nothing but beauty, and what was said after, the sermons that would shatter both courts, would come when we walked together again after Arbaeen had called us back. Praise be to God, we have been called back. Tonight we pay what was deferred. 4 sermons, 2 by the daughter of Imam Ali and 2 by his grandson. Hear what they did with nothing. Firstly, Kufa, the captive who silenced the city. So they brought the caravan into Kufa first. Of all the cities on earth, Kufa. The city whose 18,000 letters had begged Imam al-Husayn to come. The city that had sworn its loyalty to his ambassador Muslim bin Aqil, peace and blessings be upon him, and then abandoned him to die alone in its rooftops. And now the people of Kufa lined the streets to watch the family of the man they had invited and betrayed be driven past them in chains. And the chronicles say that they began to weep. And they wept after everything. And Sayyid Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her, raised her hand for silence, and a whole city fell silent before a single captive woman. And the tradition, the hadith and the Maqtal have preserved what she said. And I want you to feel the steel in it, because it is the steel that the rest of our history is forged from. And the references, of course, are in the write-up. She said, "Praise be to God and blessings upon my father Muhammad and his pure and chosen descendants. O people of Kufa, O people of treachery and betrayal, do you weep? Then may your tears never dry, and may your wailing never cease. You are like the woman who unravels her own yarn, thread by thread, after she has firmly spun it. You take your faith as a thing of deceit between you. How will you ever wash away the murder of the son of the seal of the prophets, of the Lord of the youth of paradise? You have earned the wrath of God, and in the punishment you shall abide." She did not beg, she prosecuted. She stood in chains in the city that abandoned her ambassador and slaughtered her brother. And she did not ask them for pity. She handed them their indictment. There is a Quranic blade hidden in that line about the woman who unravels her spun yarn. It is the Quran's own image from the chapter of the bee for a people who make and break their covenant with God as casually as undoing a thread. She reached into the book and pulled out the exact verse that named what Kufa was. And this is from Surah An-Nahl, the chapter of the bee, 16th chapter of the Quran, verse number 92, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like her who unravels her yarn after it was strongly spun. And here is the lesson that the whole night turns on. The most dangerous thing a tyranny can face is not an army. It is a captive who refuses to be ashamed. A tyranny knows what to do with an army. It has more soldiers, more steel, more cruelty, and in the end, it usually wins in the field. What a tyranny has no answer for is a chained woman who looks its crowd in the eye and tells them the truth about themselves and will not lower her gaze. That is the pattern that begins in Kufa and runs through the whole of our history. When the open hand has been emptied of the sword, when the rising has been put down and the army gone, the patient, clear voice of the captive becomes the voice of the entire tradition. The body can be defeated, but the testimony cannot, as long as there is a mouth left willing to carry it. Now we go to the governor's hall, and I saw nothing but beauty. From the streets, they brought her before the governor, Ubaydullah, the son of Ziyad, may the mercy of God be distant from him, in his hall in Kufa. He was, of course, haughty and flushed with victory, and he wanted to enjoy it. He looked at this woman whose entire family he had just destroyed, and he asked to wound her. How did you see what God did with your brother and your house? The references are all in the write-up. And she gave the answer the 10th night could not reach. The answer that in our tradition is the very seam where grief turns into something that the empire can never touch. Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I saw nothing but beauty. Do not mishear the line. She did not say she saw beauty instead of horror. She had just walked through horror with her own feet. She had lifted her brother's trampled body with her own hands. She saw the horror more completely than any human being who has ever lived. What she is saying is that she saw through it the one thing that horror could not reach, a covenant kept, an offering accepted by God, a witness that would outlive the empire that made it. This is what our tradition calls rida bil qada, contentment with the decree of God. And contentment with the decree is not the numbness of someone who feels no pain. It is the refusal to let the pain have the last word. She had wept, would that the sky had fallen. And she had also said, I saw nothing but beauty, both from the same heart in the same week. The grief is real. However, the grief does not get the last word. God does. This is the same vision she had already spoken over the body. The offering she lifted to the heavens at Karbala and the beauty she named in Ibn Ziyad's hall are one and the same thing. The seed she planted over her brother's body flowered a few days later in the governor's own court. He gave her a question designed to break her, and she answered it with a sentence that has outlasted his name by 1400 years, and it will always outlast his name. And now Damascus, the daughter of Ali in the court of Yazid. And then the long road to Damascus, to the very center of the empire, into the throne room of Yazid himself. May the mercy of God be distant from him. The hall was packed. The nobles of Syria, the ambassadors of foreign kings, the bishops and dignitaries gathered to watch the head of the Prophet's grandson laid before the Caliph as a trophy. And Yazid, drunk on that moment, took a cane in his hand and began to strike the teeth and lips of that severed head. And he recited the old pagan poetry of his ancestors. Would that my elders killed at Badr could see this day, declaring openly before the entire court that this was his revenge for the polytheists the Prophet's religion had defeated 2 generations earlier. And the references are all in the write-up, of course. He said it out loud. He admitted it in his own throne room, that he had killed the family of Muhammad to avenge the enemies of Muhammad, those who had animosity and hatred for Prophet Muhammad. And the daughter of Ali rose to her feet, a captive, unveiled, exhausted, surrounded by the power of the entire empire, and she demolished him. She said, and I quote, and the references are in the write-up, "O Yazid, do you imagine that because you have closed off to us the regions of the earth and the horizons of the sky, so that we are driven as captives are driven, that we are despised before God and you are honored? Plot all you wish and strive all you wish and exert every effort. By God, you will never erase our remembrance nor extinguish the revelation that came to us. And is it any justice, O son of the freed ones, at-tulaqa, that you keep your own free women and slave girls behind veils, while you have driven the daughters of the messenger of God as captives, their coverings torn, their faces uncovered, the enemy driving them on from city to city?" And the reference, like I said, is in the write-up. O son of the freed ones. Feel the precision of that knife. Yazid's whole grandeur rested on the dignity of the caliphate, on the claim to be the rightful successor of the Prophet. And in 3 words in Arabic, Yabdat Tulaqa, she reminded the entire court of what his family actually was. His grandfather Abu Sufyan, his father Muawiyah, his grandmother Hind. These were the people the Prophet had pardoned at the conquest of Mecca, known as Tulaqa, the freed ones, set at liberty by a mercy they had done nothing to earn. This is the gratitude of the freed, she said, that the grandsons of the pardoned would slaughter the grandsons of the one who pardoned them. She did not raise a weapon. She raised a genealogy and a choice that they had made, and it cut deeper than any sword in that hall. And then she did to him what she had done to Kufa. She reached into the book of God and pulled out the verses that sentenced him. To his face, she recited the warning to the tyrants who mistake God's patience for God's approval. This is from Quran, Surah Al-Imran, the chapter of the family of Imran. 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse number 178. She said, and Allah said, and she quoted, "And let not those who disbelieve imagine that the respite we grant them is good for their souls. We grant them respite only so that they may increase in sin, and for them is a humiliating punishment." You think your throne is God's blessing to you, she told him? It is God's rope, and you are busy hanging yourself with it. And for her own dead, for the bodies left in the field of Karbala, she recited the verse that turns every one of them from a corpse into a living thing. Quran, Surah Al-Imran, the chapter of the family of Imran. 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse 169. We should know this verse well by now. "And do not think of those who have been killed in the way of God as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, receiving provision." You have not killed them, she told the most powerful man in the world at the time. You have promoted them. They are not in your field, they are with their Lord, provided for. You have buried nothing. And then we, still in Damascus, we look at the chained young man who takes the pulpit. And there was one more voice in that court the empire had not reckoned with, the only survivor among the men of the house, sick almost to death, bound in chains. Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn, Zayn al-Abedeen, peace and blessings be upon him. the great-grandson of the Prophet, the fourth of the Imams of guidance. Yazid, sensing the room turning, tried to seize the narrative back. He had a court orator, a man on the imperial payroll, climb the pulpit and pour praise on Muawiyah and Yazid, and slander upon Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, and his sons. And the sick young Imam from his chains called up at him, and I quote, "Woe to you, O speaker! You have brought the pleasure of a creature at the price of the anger of the Creator. Take your seat in the fire." The references are all in the writer. And then he turned to Yazid and asked leave to climb the same pulpit, to say a few words that contain for the people the pleasure of God. Yazid refused. He knew, but the crowd, curious, pressed him, and he could not hold them. And so a chained prisoner climbed the pulpit of the empire, and what came out of his mouth, the chronicles tell us, made the whole hall weep until Yazid grew frightened of his own court. And Imam Sajjad, Imam Zayn al-Abedeen, simply told them who he was. And the references in the write-up, I will tell you what Imam Sajjad said. He said, "O people, whoever knows me, and whoever does not, let me inform him of my lineage and my descent. I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. I am the son of the one who carried the black stone in the folds of his cloak. I am the son of Muhammad al-Mustafa. I am the son of Ali al-Murtada. I am the son of the one slain at Karbala. I am the son of the one whose head was raised upon a spear, the son of the one whose women were driven as captives from Iraq to Syria." The references are all in the write-up. I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. He did not argue. He did not plead. He simply gave them his lineage, link by link, until the entire room understood that the family Yazid was parading in chains was the family in whose veins ran every sacred thing in Islam. And that meant the family Yazid had slaughtered was the Prophet's own family. And then God arranged the most exquisite collapse of the empire's theatre. As the room began to weep, Yazid, panicking, ordered the muazzin, the one who calls to prayer, to call the prayer, anything to cut the imam off. So the call began. And when the muazzin reached the words, "I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God," the chained young imam stopped him, turned to Yazid in front of the entire court and said, "This Muhammad, is he your grandfather or mine? If you say he is yours, everyone here knows you are lying. And if you confess he is mine, then why did you kill his son and take his daughters captive?" There was no answer. There has never been an answer. And the chronicles tell us that the men stood up in that hall and walked out rather than pray behind Yazid. So 2 courts, 4 sermons. And by the end, the empire that had held the field at noon on the 10th had lost the only thing that ever lasts, the argument. Yazid held the bodies. He had the head of Imam al-Husayn. Said Zaynab and Imam Sajjad held the meaning. And the regime could not behead the witness. It could not behead the witness. The regime could behead the witness, but it could not behead the witness after the witness. And here's the thing I want each and every one of us to stay with, because it's the most practical lesson in the whole of our religion. They had nothing. They had no army, no freedom, no allies, no weapons. Not even their own clothing. They'd been stripped of their veils from their heads. They had a clear voice, and they had the truth, and they had their refusal to be ashamed and their reliance upon God. And with those things alone, a captive woman and a chained young man brought down the moral authority of a dynasty that had armies and gold and the whole apparatus of empire. The Umayyad house that thought it had won at Karbala was broken within a few generations and is remembered today by the entire world, Shia and Sunni alike, as a byword for tyranny. That is what the witness after the witness did with nothing. Which raises the question the tradition has circled for 1400 years. The question that is the doorway to everything else tonight. How? How does a captive woman, a sick boy in chains, stand in the throne room of the man who has just butchered their entire family and not break? What did they have on the inside that the empire could not reach? Please give me a salawat and we move on to the next point, which is the road has a destination.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah.
So first, let's talk about the rank of Sayyid Zaynab. And we will need this to understand going forward. Our tradition has a description of Sayyid Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her, that it does not give lightly. It calls her mahfuzatun anil khata, protected from error. Now, she is not a prophet. She is not one of the 14 infallibles, not one of the what we call ma'asumeen, whose protection from sin is a pillar of our creed. And we will come to what that protection from sin means shortly. And yet the tradition for 14 centuries has placed her at a station that stands very near the perfected summit. So the question for tonight is not only how did she not break, it is something greater. Is that station a thing only they can reach? A different species of human beings sealed off from us? Or is it the far end of a road that we ourselves are standing on? And this is a very important question. Here the tradition draws a line that we must not blur. There is the intrinsic and total infallibility, what we call al-Ismah al-Kubra, woven into the very being by God's decree and lasting a whole life long. And that belongs to the Prophet, to Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, and to the 12 Imams, peace and blessings be upon them all, and to none else. And there is what we call hifth, a protection God lays upon his chosen servant, resting on a soul purified almost to that summit for the carrying of a particular trust. When our scholars call Sayyid Zaynab mahfuzatun anil khata, protected from error, they mean the second, not the first, not the sealed infallibility of the 14, which we will explain, but a real God-given guarding of her tongue and her judgment for the mission that Karbala laid upon her. And we can see exactly why it was needed. With Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn, Zayn al-Abedeen, peace and blessings be upon him, gravely ill and marked for execution, it fell to Sayyid Zaynab to carry the outward authority of guidance through those first terrible months. If you look in our chronicles, you will see there are moments when Sayyid Zaynab stood between Imam Sajjad and the swords in the tents. So the questions that needed to be answered and the rulings that needed to be given in her name were to shield the Imam. God does not entrust the keeping of his religion to one who might err in it. And the Imam himself testified to where her knowledge came from. As she spoke in the court of Kufa, he said to her, and again the references are in the write-up, "O aunt," this is Imam Sajjad talking to Sayyid Zaynab, "O aunt, you are, by the grace of God, a knower untaught, and one who comprehends without being instructed." A knower untaught. Knowledge not gathered by the fallible human hand, but placed in her directly by God. And what God places, God protects in the conveying. That is the weight that sits behind the phrase, mahfuzatun anil khata. So, here a word is needed that clears away a confusion that perhaps many of us carry, because it goes to the very heart of what this notion of infallibility, Ismah, actually is. To place that supreme infallibility with the 14 is not to say that the other prophets of God were anything less than protected. Every prophet, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, peace and blessings be upon them all, were ma'soom, guarded from sin, minor and major, before his mission and after it. Imam al-Baqir, peace and blessings be upon him, taught that God never sent a prophet except that he protected him from disbelief and corruption and every sin. References are in the write-up. Imam Baqir has said, verily God, blessed and exalted is he, did not send a single prophet except that he protected him from disbelief and immorality and sins, and Satan did not harm him in his religion nor in his worldly affairs. Infallibility is the shared flaw of prophethood, not the private possession of the 14 alone. But someone always asks, does the Quran not say that Adam disobeyed his Lord? Does it not speak of the slips of the prophets? And here is the nuance that is so often missed. And getting it right matters, because the careless reading hands our opponents a weapon and robs us of the truth. Asked about that very verse, so Adam disobeyed his Lord and erred. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, answered, and the references are in the write-up, the disobedience is not what you imagine. Rather, it was only the leaving of the better course, known as tarka awla. We walked this same ground on the fifth night, the cross and the witness, when we set Adam's story against the Christian doctrine of the fall. The word over the tree was a counsel and not a binding law, the advice of a physician, if you will, not the decree of a king. And what came after was the natural consequence of that choice, not the punishment of a crime. That is tarka awla. Never the doing of a sin, but the leaving of the most perfect of permitted options. Now for you and me, to miss the better choice is nothing at all. Half the time we don't know what the better choice is. But for a soul at the very summit of his nearness to God, even a permitted act that falls a hair short of the highest is reckoned, relative to the station alone, a slip. Allama Tabatabai explains it. What is merely allowed can be a shortcoming in the one whose whole being is meant to be entirely absorbed in God. The greater the light, the smaller the shadow that shows against it. So the prophets all share infallibility, and the 14 stand at the summit of it, the highest degree of a protection every prophet holds, sealed for them by explicit text, the verse of purification, Sūrah al-Ahzab, 33rd chapter of the Quran, verse number 33, and joined to a cosmic trust, what we call a wilaya takwiniyya. And we will come into these subjects of wilaya in our forthcoming Wednesday sessions after Arbaeen has completed. And this is something that the General Office of Prophethood does not carry. The General Office of Prophethood. There's a difference. One protection graded in degrees, and at its peak, the family for whom this night is kept. Now, to answer the larger question then, we have to be clear about how that protection works in a living soul. A doctrine that is very often misunderstood, even amongst us. And we have to begin by clearing away two more things that it is not. Ismah, or infallibility, is not the suspension of free will. The infallible is not a puppet whose hand God holds back from sin. And Ismah, or infallibility, is not some metaphysical inability to sin, as though the Ma'soom, the infallible, were in a locked door, a machine that simply cannot do wrong. Because if that is what it meant, then their sinlessness would be no virtue at all. If they cannot sin, then how is them not sinning a virtue? A door earns no praise for staying shut when it has no power to open. There is no honor in goodness if you could not have departed from it. If said Zaynab could not have broken in that throne room, then her not breaking means nothing. The whole point is that she could have broken, and she did not. So what is it? Now the Hawza has carried the answer down a chain of our greatest teachers, from Shaykh al-Mufid in the 5th century of the Hijrah, through Allama al-Hilli, through Allama Tabatabai in our own age, into the teachings of Ayatollah Jawadi Amali today. And the word at the center of it is lutf, grace. Ismah is a divine grace that places into the heart such an overwhelming abundance of the knowledge of God and such an intensity of love for Him that while the full power to sin remains, the desire to sin simply has no weight left in it. Sheikh al-Mufid put it with great precision. The references are, of course, in the write-up. Sheikh Mufid writes, infallibility is a grace, a lutf, that God the Exalted bestows upon the responsible one, such that the occurrence of disobedience and the abandonment of obedience become impossible for him, while he still possesses the power over both. And Allama Tabatabai drew the line under it exactly. And the references again are all in the write-up. Allama writes, the infallible person turns away from sin purely by himself, through his own choice and his own will. Indeed, Ismah is the inner disposition, what we call malaka nafsiyya, that prevents its possessor from committing sin. The perfecting of the will, not the removal of the will, its perfection. Now hold that beside the image that we have carried with us through every single night of this series thus far. Shaykh Mutahhari's candle, the candle that burns itself in order to give the room light. Here is what Ismah is in the language of the candle. The fire of their love for God burns so completely that the little candles the lower self keeps offering, here, take comfort, here, take safety, here, take the approval of the powerful, and you can keep your life. Those little candles give no light at all beside the blaze that they are already carrying. It is not that the infallible cannot see what the safety offers. It is that next to the fire of God already burning in the heart, the bribe of safety is a struck match held up against the sun. That is how a captive woman stands in Yazid's court and feels no pull to soften the truth for the sake of her life. It is not that she felt the fear and overcame it by gritting her teeth. It is that there was nothing safety could put on the table that weighed anything at all against what she was already holding. And now, hear why this is not a lecture or a session or a sermon about them, but rather an invitation to us. The most hopeful sentence in the whole of our theology. The Ma'sumeen are not a different species of being. Now hear carefully what I'm saying. Pay a lot of attention because I don't want misunderstandings. The Ma'sumeen are not a different species of being. They are not made of other clay. They are human beings as God designed the human being to be. The perfected end of the very road that every one of us is invited in our daily struggle to walk. We will not reach the end of the road. The summit is theirs. But, and this is everything, we are on the same road. It is not a different road. Every act of what we call tazkiyat an-nafs, the purification of the self, every single time we refuse the little candle of comfort or status or safety for the sake of the great fire, that is a step, our step, yours and mine, down the same road that Zaynab walked to its very end. And do not let anyone tell you that road has no way stations short of their summit. The intrinsic infallibility of the 14 is theirs and theirs alone. We will not stand where they stand. But the masters of our tradition, the masters from the Hawza, speak of something else upon this same road. Well below the summit certainly, yet far above where most of us live. And it's called al-Ismat al-Iktisabiyya, an acquired protection from sin. One that a human being earns through the long labor of purifying the self. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali says it plainly, as plainly as it can be said, and the references are in the write-up. He says, infallibility is not confined to the prophets, the angels, and the imams. Rather, its door is open to all. The door of practical infallibility is closed to no one. And how can a person be unable to sin and yet remain free? Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi answered with a very simple image, a single image. Think about it like this, and I want you to imagine this. Set a glass of poison before someone in their right mind. Their hand is entirely free, no one restrains it. They are perfectly able to lift it and drink. And yet they never will. Not because they are forced, not because they are being stopped by something else, but because their certainty that it would kill them makes the very thought of drinking it unthinkable. That is the perfected will. The believer who through years of tazkiyat an-nafs, purification of the soul, comes truly to see that a lie, a cruelty, a surrender of conscience is poison to the soul, reaches a place where the sin stays possible to the hand and becomes impossible to the heart. The candle and the glass of poison are one teaching from two directions. When the fire of God burns that brightly and the toxicity of the sin is seen that clearly, the little candle of safety is not refused through clenched teeth. It is simply seen for what it is and left where it lies. Please give me a salawat and we move on to She Guarded the Imam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah.
So she walked that road to its very end, to the Mahfuzatan and al-Khata station that we began with. But here we have to be careful, because what she did next is easily misunderstood and the truth is far greater than the mistake. Said Zaynab did not become the Imam in the months after Karbala, and the Imama did not pass through her. The Imam after Imam al-Husayn was Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abedeen. Peace and blessings be upon them both. And he was the Imam by Nas, the explicit divine designation that Imam Hussein had placed upon him in the moments prior to Ashura. The leadership was already his, sealed on the day of the 10th. It did not leave the line of Imams for a single nanosecond. What Sayyid Zaynab did was something else entirely. And it is the very thing that this night asks of us. She guarded the Imam. She kept him alive when the swords were seeking him. She stood between him and the courts. She carried the outward business of the caravan, the answers, the bearing, the public voice, precisely so that the ailing Imam would be shielded and the line preserved in him. And she made it unmistakably plain to everyone watching who the authority now was. When the tents were set ablaze and the women had to choose between the fire and the open desert, she, the elder, the towering figure of the household, did not decide on her own. She turned to that young ill man and asked him, and the references in the write-up, she says, "O remnant of the past ones and refuge of the remaining ones," she's addressing Imam Sajjad, "they have set fire to our tents, so what is your instruction? What is your opinion?" And Imam Sajjad replied to her, "O aunt, you must flee." And the references, like I said, are in the write-up. "O remnant of those who have passed, O refuge of those who remain, they have set our tents on fire. What is your command?" And he said, "O aunt, you must flee." She, said Zaynab, with all her rank, all of her knowledge, sought the ruling of the Imam of her time and obeyed it the moment she received it, without delay. In that single exchange, She taught the entire caravan. She teaches us exactly who the proof of God now was. So she did not hand on the imamah. She protected the one who carried it. And in guarding him, she guarded Islam itself and the truth from being snuffed out in the chaos after Karbala. And that is the call this night lays upon us. Not to become anything that we are not, but to know that the Imam of our own age, the awaited one, may our souls be his ransom and may God hasten his return. And in his absence, to hold fast to his guidance through the Wali al-Faqih. And in our age, now, Imam Sayyid Mujtaba al-Husayni al-Khamenei. May God protect him. And to guard the truth with our own witness, exactly as Sayyid Zaynab did. So the road has a destination. And the road is walked by ordinary people, one refusal at a time. Which means the question is no longer about her. It is about us. And if anyone here is thinking that such a fire is only for the Zaynabs of the world and not for someone like them, someone ordinary, someone who knows their own sins all too well, then hear where the tradition says this fire is lit. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his family and his righteous companions, said, in a saying preserved for us through Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, in the earliest books of Ziyarat called Kamil al-Ziyarat. And I quote, and the reference of course are in the write-up. Indeed, in the killing of Hussein, there is a heat in the hearts of the believers that never grows cold. A heat, what we call harara, that never grows cold. Our scholars are insistent that this is no mere sentiment of sorrow. It's not just mere rhetoric. Shaykh Mutahhari, may God rest his pure soul, reads it as the very thing that keeps Karbala a living epic and not a dead date in a book. A heat, a fire if you like, that will not let the believer make his peace with tyranny. Shaykh Mutahhari writes, and the reference of course in the write-up, this heat causes the event of Karbala to exit the form of a mere historical event and transform into a living, eternal epic. Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, may God protect him, reads it as a divine light, a love placed by God in the heart that keeps the heart from hardening and dying. This is the fire of our whole metaphor. And the tradition is telling us that we do not have to manufacture it out of nothing. It is placed in the believing heart by the witness of Imam al-Husayn himself. Ayatollah Jawadi writes, and the references of course are in the write-up, verily the martyrdom of Imam Hussein is a heat in the hearts of the believers that will never cool. This heat is the divine light that prevents the heart from hardening and dying. And that is the deepest reason we gather and weep and refuse to let this memory die down and cool. The remembrance of Imam al-Husayn received rightly, not as a spectacle to be watched, but understood for what it truly is the spark that lights the love of God in the ordinary heart. A person can walk into a majlis a wretch, weighed down by his own failings and his sins, and the witness of Imam al-Husayn can kindle in him a love of God so real that he walks out the beginning of a lover. For whoever truly beholds what Imam al-Husayn gave and why cannot help but be set alight by it. That is why this remembrance is neither nostalgia nor is it theatre. It is the ignition of the very fire by which the whole road, every refusal, every act of tazkiyat an-nafs, purifying the soul, becomes possible to walk. Imam Hussain does not only show us the end of the road, he gives us the fire to begin it. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the next point, which is we are the witnesses after the witness.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
So let me say something now that I want to land with weight, with its full weight. because it is the reason that we are here tonight, that we have made time from our schedules to be here tonight. We did not stand at Karbala. None of us was on that mount, nor were we in the markets of Kufa or the throne room of Damascus. It is tempting then to think of ourselves as an audience of this story. People who hear it, who are moved by it, weep at it, and then go home to their regular lives. I want to tell you that that is not what we are. We are not just mere audience of this story. We are inside it. We stand in the lineage of said Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her. Let us trace the chain together. Every gathering of mourning held in a room, every pilgrim who walks towards the grave, every Muharram or Safar sermon raised in any city, in any language, 14 centuries on, whether a short walk from the field of Karbala, or half a world away from it, be it something in the UK, in Martinique, in Indonesia, in Canada, in America, anywhere. Every one of these is a continuation of the sermon that she began in the market of Kufa. The chain of witness that opened in that hour has never once closed. It runs from her to Imam Sajjad, Imam Zayn al-Abedeen, and from him down the line of the Imams, peace and blessings be upon them all. One entrusting it to the next until it reaches the Imam of our own age, Imam al-Mahdi, the master of the age. May our souls be his ransom and may God hasten his return. The inheritance in truth is his. And because he is veiled from us, he did not leave it lying around unguarded. It runs on through the righteous and just scholars who copied and kept these texts under every passing tyranny, to the reciter on the pulpit, the responsible reciter, into this very room, into this night, into us. We are not the owners of this trust. We are its current keepers, holding it for the one to whom it belongs. The testimony said Zaynab refused to let die was handed, hand to hand, down 14 centuries, and it is now in our hands to carry and to move forward and to give back. But notice where this chain has reached, and let it raise the question that it forces. If the inheritance has come down unbroken to the Imam of our age, then why has he not taken it up in the open? Why is the master of the age still veiled from us? Our tradition gives an answer. We must have the courage to hear. He is hidden not because of any failing in him, but because of failings in us. We are not yet ready. We are not yet the companions who gathered around Imam al-Husayn on the night of Ashura, the ones we called the lamps that would not flicker, who offered their lives and their leave to go, who were offered their lives and they were given the opportunity to go, but they chose to stay. The day the world holds enough hearts like those, the veil will lift. So the trust is in our hands, not as owners, but as keepers, to carry with diligence, with care, with great precision, and to labor to become the kind of people fit to hand it back to the one whose it is, and so thereby to hasten his return. And here is the mercy in it. God, in his infinite mercy, did not leave us orphaned in this labor, to flail in the dark and guess. The Imam of the age did not vanish and abandon his Shia. He left a chain of guidance that does not break in the occultation. The wilayat al-faqih, the guardianship of the jurist, of course the marja'iyya as well, the qualified jurist who stands in the Imam's absence as his general deputy. This is no office that the scholars have merely invented for themselves. The Imam has appointed it. And we have studied this in our Mahdawiyya sessions. And in the signed letter, what we call a tawqi', he sent out before the beginning of the major occultation, before the veil closed, the Imam of the age wrote, and the references are in the write-up. As for the events that befall you, refer in them to the narrators of our traditions, for they are my proof over you, and I am God's proof over them. His proof over us. They are Imam Mahdi's proof over us. To turn to the just jurist is to turn through him to the Imam, exactly as the Quran commands us to obey God, obey the Messenger, and those truly vested with authority amongst us. In Quran, Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women, 4th chapter of the Quran, verse number 59. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, obey God and obey the Messenger and those vested with authority amongst you. And if you dispute concerning anything, refer it to God and the Messenger. If you have faith in God and the last day, that is better and more favorable in outcome. And so in our own time, we have only recently lost our beloved Imam Sayyid Ali al-Husayn Khamenei. May God rest his pure soul. And by the time we have this majlis, we will have already buried him next to Imam al-Rida. And now we live under the one who has taken up the trust after him, the Wali al-Faqih of our time, Imam Sayyid Mujtaba al-Husayni al-Khamenei. May God protect him and strengthen him. To hold fast to his guidance and to heed his commands is not an optional refinement for the especially devout. It is a duty upon anyone who truly means it when he says that he is working for the return of the Master of the age. And now turn back to Sayyid Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her, and see that this is the very lesson of her night. She was the towering figure of the household, and yet, in the burning tents, she did not take a single step until she had asked the Imam of her time and obeyed him to the letter. She referred to him and she followed him without excuse, without argument, and in the heart of the chaos, even when the easier road lay open. And that is exactly what is asked of each and every one of us. We follow the Imam of our time. May our souls be his ransom, may God hasten his return. And in his occultation, the one who keeps his place, and we do so even when we cannot yet see the whole of what he intends. For this obedience now is in truth, and this is extremely important. This obedience now is in truth a rehearsal, a dry run for the day that the Imam, may our souls be his ransom, returns. And if we cannot school our fragile egos to follow his just deputy today, we can be certain that we will not have the discipline to stand with the Imam tomorrow. As Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei, may God rest his pure soul, taught, awaiting him, awaiting Imam al-Hujjah, Imam Mahdi, is not idleness. He writes, awaiting is an act, it is a preparation. To await the deliverance means to prepare your own self. To await means that you must be always in a state of readiness. And the references are in the write-up. The fuller doctrine of this, what Wilayat al-Faqih is and what it is not, its proofs, its limits, its place in the architecture of the occultation, we will give its proper due, God willing, following the Mahdawiyya arc of our Wednesday sessions following Arbaeen. Tonight, only this. To await the Imam is not to sit and wait. Rather, it is to prepare. And the first discipline of that preparation is to follow the leadership of our age without excuse, without looking for loopholes, and without any hesitation. To stand in Sayyid Zaynab's lineage in our own time is to know the Imam we await and to follow the one who keeps his place until he comes. And if we do not understand all of this, then we have not understood why we are here, and we have not understood why it matters, far more than we tend to think that we in our own cities learn to speak clearly. Because look again at what the witness after the witness actually did. She did not only weep, though of course she wept, and we weep, and the weeping is sacred, and we will never apologize for it. But weeping was not the inheritance. The inheritance was that she carried the meaning and said it plainly in the room where it was least welcome. She told Kufa the truth about Kufa. She told Yazid the truth about Yazid to their faces, in their own halls. That is the thing handed down to us. And here is the honest application. That perhaps the one that should make us maybe a little uncomfortable. For almost everyone in this room, the frontier where your faith is tested is not a battlefield. We will speak of the frontier, the thughur, tomorrow night, God willing. Your frontier, my frontier, is the room where the truth is unwelcome, and silence would be so much easier. The workplace where a thing is said about Islam or about the oppressed that you know to be a lie. And the easy thing, the so much easier thing, is to let it stand and keep your comfort. Don't get involved. In the campus, on the timeline on your phone, at the family dinner table. Said Zaynab did not let the lie stand in the throne room of the man who had just killed her brother. We are asked at the very least not to let it stand in ours. That is the whole of the inheritance, reduced to something that you can carry out of this room tonight. But, and this is the part we must get exactly right, because everything depends upon it. The inheritance is not only that we testify, it is also how. She carried the truth in a very particular way, and the way is part of the witness. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the method is part of the witness.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
So notice what Sayyid Zaynab and Imam Zayn al-Abedeen, peace and blessings be upon them, did not do. Think back to Kufa, to the governor's hall. The man responsible for the slaughter of her family was sitting a mere few feet in front of her. Did the family of the Prophet find someone and send them in the night to put a knife in Ibn Ziyad? No, they did not. Did our beloved Imam al-Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him, sneak an assassin into Kufa before Karbala to remove the governor and solve the problem? He did not. The household of the Prophet stood in the open, in the daylight, with their chests bare, and they fought. When they fought face to face. And otherwise they testified with the open voice. Never once by the knife in the dark. Now this is not an accident of circumstance. It is the law of our religion. And I want to give it to you with its proper names, because it is one of the clearest dividing lines between the way of Ahl al-Bayt and the way of the empires of every age. There is qital, open declared combat, where two sides face each other and both know they're at war. Our tradition permits this within very strict limits and in its place. And there is something the tradition calls fatk, or also ghila, or sometimes al-iqtiyal, the killing of a person by stealth, by ambush, when that person feels safe and is off his guard. And there is ghadr, which is treachery, the breaking of a covenant of safety that you have given. And the ruling on these last three, by the consensus of our jurists from the classical age down to the maraji of Qom and Najaf today, is that they are forbidden. And forbidden, mark this, even against an enemy combatant. Not merely discouraged, forbidden in their essence. The clearest text in the whole tradition is a question of a man named Abu Sabah al-Kinani, once put to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him. He had a neighbor who had openly and viciously cursed the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali himself. Surely, he thought, this one's blood is forfeit. So he asked the Imam, may I assassinate him? And the Imam replied unequivocally, and the references are all in the write-up. Imam Sadiq said, O Abu Sabah, this is assassination, and the Messenger of God forbade assassination. O Abu Sabah, Islam has shackled assassination. Leave him be. God will suffice you against him by other means. The reference, like I said, is in the write-up. Islam has shackled assassination, even against a man who curses Imam Ali to the Imam's own grandson. No. And this rests on the very flaw of the Quran, which forbids treachery so completely that it will not even let you end a treaty by stealth. In Quran, Surah Anfal, the chapter of the spoils of war, 8th chapter of the Quran, verse number 58, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And if you fear treachery from a people, throw their treaty back to them openly on equal terms. Indeed, God does not love the treacherous." Even if you know the enemy is plotting against you, you may not strike him in the dark. You must declare openly that the covenant is ended, and only then face him in the light. And the living embodiment of that law was Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, who could have ended his war with Muawiyah 100 times by cunning, and chose every time not to. And he says in Nahj Balagha, and the references in the write-up, Imam Ali says, "By God, Muawiyah is no more cunning than I am, but he is treacherous and he transgresses. Were it not for my hatred of treachery, I would be the most cunning of all men. But every treachery is a sin, and every sin a defiance of God. And every treacherous man will carry a banner on the day of resurrection by which he is known." In essence, Imam Ali is telling us, I could win the way they win. I refuse to, because how you win is part of what you are fighting for. And he gave us the maxim that stands like a wall against every man who has ever excused a crime by saying that he was following orders. Imam Ali writes, again, the references are in the write-up, "There is no obedience to any creature in disobedience to the Creator." You've already met this law once in this series, and perhaps did not notice it was the same law. On the 4th night, the ambassador, Muslim bin Aqil, peace and blessings be upon him, was hiding in the house of Hani ibn Urwa in Kufa, and Ibn Ziyad walked in, unguarded, within arm's reach. Muslim had been urged, kill him now, and Kufa is yours, and Karbala may never happen. And Muslim refused. And when they asked him why, he gave this very hadith: Islam has shackled assassination, the believer does not kill by stealth. It was, in the language of our very first night, Abel's choice, the brother who would rather be killed than become a killer in the dark. Shaykh Mutahhari, may God rest his pure soul, sums the whole principle up in a single line. And he says, and the references again are in the write-up, in Islam, the end does not make the means permissible. We do not use an unholy means for a holy goal. This is also a very important point. And this is where we answer the objection that always comes, the quiet voice that says, but doesn't that put us at a disadvantage? If they assassinate and we do not, don't they win? Hear the answer very carefully, because it turns the whole thing over. Assassination is not the weapon of the strong. Rather, it is the confession of the defeated. A power that has to kill in the dark is a power that knows it has already lost the argument in the daylight. They strike from the shadows precisely because they cannot stand the light, and because they cannot stand in the light. Because in open, ideological, spiritual confrontation, they have nothing. Even in physical confrontation, they have nothing. The believer who refuses the knife in the dark is not accepting a disadvantage. He is refusing to pretend that the only kind of victory is the empire's kind. How you win is part of what you win. And now we look at the law walked in our own lifetime. Unless this sounds like some ancient story, some ancient law, let me show you the very same thing, breathing in a man who died in our own time. For 25 years, the enemy knew Haj Imad Mughniya by a shadow and a code name, Haj Ridwan, and almost nothing else. He effaced himself so completely that the cause and not the man was what the world saw. And where did that effacement come from? Dr. Hussein Akbari, who is a renowned Iranian geopolitical scientist, in his study of Imad Mughniya, traces it to the very beginning. He writes, and the references are in the write-up, Imad Mughniya began his life with the purification of his self, Tazkiyat an-Nafs, and the acquisition of the religious sciences, and only then engaged in the work of his community. First, the inner work, Tazkiyat an-Nafs, what we've mentioned earlier, and only then the outer, and the engine of the whole of it. Dr. Akbari says the engine of everything Imad did was his belief in Ashura, his Ashura'i belief. The conviction that bound his every act of resistance to the field of Karbala. Dr. Akbari writes, Haj Imad's drive in resisting domination was bound to his Ashura belief, what we call i'tiqad Ashura'i. And it was this that made him a daring mujahid and a great force against the usurping Zionist entity. The references are all in the write-up. The Ashura that Sayyid Zaynab carried off the field is the same Ashura that 14 centuries later made a man pour himself out so completely that he didn't even keep a name for himself. And the detail that should stop us. Look at how that family met its losses. This is very interesting. When Imad's families, Haj Imad's families, his parents rather, learnt of his martyrdom, Dr. Akbari records, they gave thanks to God that he had sealed the life of their third son with martyrdom. And his mother, after the later martyrdom of her son Jihad, of her grandson Jihad, Haj Imad's son, she said, and the references in the write-up, the blow of my grandson Jihad's martyrdom was far harder upon me than the martyrdom of Imad. A mother who carried the killing of her own son with such acceptance that a later grief could weigh heavier than his. And Dr. Akbari names exactly where such patience comes from. It is sabr al-jamil, the beautiful patience, which he says no family could reach except by drawing on the patience of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. As-sabr al-jamil, the very phrase the Quran places on the lips of the Prophet Yaqub, or Jacob, peace and blessings be upon him in his grief. In Quran, Surah Yusuf, the chapter of Prophet Joseph, 12th chapter of the Quran, verse number 18, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they produced sham blood on his shirt. He said, no, your souls have made a matter seem decorous to you. Yet patience is beautiful, and God is my resort against what you allege. And the same well Sayyid Zaynab drew from when she stood in the ruin of Karbala and said, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, I saw nothing but beauty. 14 centuries apart, the same patience between Jacob and Sayyid Zaynab, drawn from the same source, between Sayyid Zaynab and the family of Imad. The chain has not closed. And here is the law itself, walked in a single night on the border of Lebanon. This was narrated by one of the brothers who was in the operations room when it happened, a man who has since himself become one of the witnesses on the caravan, may God rest his pure soul. In the years of the occupation of the south, near the fortress of Beaufort Castle, the Islamic resistance had prepared an operation against a very senior figure of the Zionist regime who was to pass through. That figure was none other than Mr. Netanyahu. Everything was ready. The men were in position, the weapons were set. And in the final moments, as the motorcade came into view, the last reconnaissance saw that there was a child in the vehicle, and family, and journalists. The word went back to Sayyid Hassan and Haj Imad, who were overseeing the operation. And Sayyid Hassan ordered them at once, immediately, to stand down, to abort. The men, some of them came back confused, some of them angry. But these are occupiers. This was the most important target imaginable. Why? And Sayyid Hassan told them, in words the one narrating this told me, carried. This is not how we operate. In our theology, there is no such thing as collateral damage. Any soul killed is upon our necks, and we will have to answer to God for it. And he recited to them the verse that our whole religion stands on. Quran, Surah al-Ma'idah, the chapter of the table spread, 5th chapter of the Quran, verse number 32. Whoever kills a soul, unless for a soul or for corruption in the land, it is as though he has killed all of humanity. Think about what that means. The most pivotal enemy of the entire regime was in the crosshairs, and the operation was ended, rather than let a child or a non-combatant journalist be harmed. That is the line our religion draws. And it is the line the whole world's other systems erase with a single phrase. A combatant in a declared war is one matter. The believer may face him in the open. But the treacherous killing of a man under a covenant of safety or the killing of non-combatants beside him, that is something else entirely. And it is entirely forbidden. There is a permitted stratagem of open war, what the tradition calls khoda, the feint, the misdirection. War is deception. And it is a world away from ghadr, the betrayal of trust. The men obeyed, though they did not yet understand. And that obedience, the will that submits to its guide, even against its own reasoning, is the very thing we were speaking of a moment ago. The trained will, walking the road. They are killed by stealth. They will not kill by it. And the asymmetry is itself the testimony. And as a brief aside, there is in our own history a hard example of the opposite road. And I name it only in passing tonight, because it deserves a full and careful telling at another time. There was a movement that arose claiming love for Ahl al-Bayt, the followers of Hassan al-Sabah, in the fortress of Alamut, which is very close to modern-day Qazwin. The ones history calls the assassins. And they made stealth killing and the betrayal of trust their very method, and suspended the sacred law in order to do it. Our tradition never accepted the method, because their secret dagger is precisely the open witness of Karbala turned inside out. The popular imagination of our day, with its films and its computer games, has romanticized them. We love a great story too, but the romance of the shadow does not make the shadow's method true. The full account of how they came to be and why belongs to another night in our Wednesday sessions within the Mahdawiyya series, God willing. Now we turn the criterion onto the present and let it do its work. The empires of our day assassinate as a matter of policy. The drone over the airport, the car bomb in the morning commute, the device left on a motorcycle, the pager, the poison. And of every such killing, our faith asks one question: in the open or in the dark? Of the soldier or the strategist, an argument can at least be attempted. He is, the regime will say, a combatant. One can argue the case. Whether the argument is valid or not is another discussion, but it can be argued. But here's the question I want to leave ringing, and we will cover this later on, but I want to start you thinking about it now, because there is no answer to it. What is the excuse for killing a professor of nuclear physics? For a cancer researcher? For a scholar of artificial intelligence? What combatant is this? That is the killing of a non-combatant by stealth, and worse, it is the killing of knowledge itself, in order to keep a whole people backward, dependent, and unable to rise. Or at least that's the intent. And our tradition holds knowledge so sacred that it weighs the ink of a scholar against the blood of a martyr, and does not find the scholar wanting. The empire assassinates the scientist precisely because it knows what God knows. That knowledge is the deepest threat there is to any form of oppression. This is why they're killing scientists and teachers in Gaza. You see the same thing in Iran. So whenever you hear of a physicist killed in his car with his wife beside him, understand exactly what you're looking at. Not strength, but the confession of the defeated. And understand too that the witness against the regime is in the same breath is, in the same breath, the witness for the people the regime is trying to keep in the dark. Their right to learn, to build, to stand up. As I said, the fuller naming, the long roll call of the assassinated, the scientists and the scholars and the commanders of our own lifetime waits for the night when we name the living witnesses one at a time. Tonight, we just mentioned the principle. So this is the inheritance whole. The witness after the witness carries the meaning and carries it the way she carried it. In the open, with the bare chest and the clear voice. Never by the method of the shadow. That is the road. And it runs straight from the chained woman in a throne room to us tonight. So let me ask you to leave with something in your hands, not just in your eyes. Between tonight and tomorrow morning, find the one room in your life where you have been letting the lie stand. You know the room. I know the room. It is the one, and when I say you, I'm talking to myself as well. It is the one where it costs something to speak, where the easy thing is the silence. And resolve quietly in that room, you will be what said Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her, was in hers. The witness after the witness. Not loud, not reckless, but clear. Refusing to let the lie keep the last word. That is the whole of what tonight asks. The chain of witness reached your hands. The only question is whether it goes further from here. And now I hand you to another voice. We have spoken all night of the sister. And there is one who has been listening to us speak of her, the one in whose lineage she stands, and whose lineage we stand, her great nephew, her great nephew, the awaited Imam al-Mahdi, may our souls be his ransom and may God hasten his return. It was his voice that broke at the trampling on the 10th night and could not finish the line. Tonight, let him tell us what it was to watch his aunt stand, and let us listen as his voice, broken since the noon of the 10th, begins at the sound of her words to find its feet again. You will notice beside the candle tonight there is one new thing, a single torn length of dark cloth laid across a grey stone, the veil that was pulled from the heads of the women of the household of the Prophet. That is what sits beside the flame. Look at it while you listen.
I was not there, but I remember. I remember that when the swords had finished and the dust began to settle on a field that held everyone I have ever called my own, there was a sound the chronicles almost forget to record. It was not the sound of the killing had a sound, and you have heard me carry it. And last of all, it broke in my throat, and I could not finish the line. This was the sound that came after. It was the sound of the ones who were left. My beloved, there is a grief that falls to the one who dies, but there is another grief, and it is heavier, and it is given to the one who does not get to die, to stand in the wreckage of everyone you loved, and to be told by your own heart, you must live, you must carry this. That grief was my aunt's. They would pull the veils from the heads of the women before the sun went down. Hold up, keep that torn cloth in your mind through everything I am about to tell you. It is the measure of what was done, and the measure of what she rose above. She did not stay in the tents. When the circle closed on my forefather, my aunt came out to a small rise of ground where she could see the whole of it. And she watched. She watched the thing that no human eye should be made to watch. And she did not look away. And she cried out, not a small cry. She cried for the order of creation itself to come undone rather than permit what it was permitting. Would that the sky had fallen upon the earth, would that the mountains had been crushed down upon the plain. My beloved, That is the cry that lives closest to where my own voice broke. When I tell you that the voice you are hearing tonight is not yet whole, it is here. You can hear the crack in it most clearly. And then, this is my aunt. She did not only grieve, she turned to the commander of the army that was killing her brother, and she called him by his name, and she said, "Will Abu Abdullah be killed while you stand and watch him?" The man wept into his beard, and he did not stop his soldiers. But mark it, the first thing she did was not to weep in private. The first thing she did was to name the guilty to his face from the very first second. Hers was the voice of a witness. Then she walked out onto the field. I have tried, across all these centuries, to find words for that walk, and I have not found them. She walked through the bodies of the people she had loved her whole life. She walked to the place where my forefather lay, and she knelt. And she put her hands beneath that holy body, and she lifted it a little toward the sky. And she did not say, "They have destroyed us." My beloved, listen, because here is where my voice begins to come back to me. She lifted the worst thing that had ever happened to a human family up toward the heavens, and she named it an offering. "Oh God," she said, "accept from us this sacrifice." I was not there, but I remember the moment grief became an offering, and I will tell you a secret of that hour. It was not my own strength that has carried my voice these 12 centuries, it was hers. When the trampling broke me, it was my aunt who had already shown me how a heart stands inside a thing that should shatter it. The empire held the field, my aunt held what the field meant. And the moment the offering left her lips, something in me that had broken at the noon of the 10th began, very slowly, to find its feet again. They bound them. They roped the women and the children of the house of the Prophet together. And they raised the heads of my family on the points of their spears, and they drove the caravan out toward Kufa as a parade. Understand what they intended, my beloved. They intended a victory march, the proof that the matter was finished, that resistance was a corpse in a field behind them. And my aunt took the parade they built to break her, and she turned it into the opening of a trial. Every town became a court, every staring crowd became a jury that would answer one day for what its eyes had seen and its tongue had not denounced. The chains they meant as her humiliation, she wore them up onto a pulpit. I was not there, but I remember that the empire thought it was leading a procession of the defeated, and did not understand, until it was far too late, that it was escorting the prosecution into its own house. They brought them first to Kufa. Kufa. And you who walked the 4th night with me, you know what that name costs, the city of the 18,000 letters. The city that invited my family and then abandoned my ambassador to die alone on its rooftops. Now the people of Kufa lined the road to watch my family driven past in chains, and they began to weep. They wept after everything, they wept. And my aunt raised her hand, and a whole city fell silent before a captive woman. And she did not thank them for their tears, she told them what their tears were worth. O people of Kufa, O people of treachery and betrayal, do you weep now? Then let your tears never dry. How will you ever wash away the murder of the son of the seal of the prophets? She stood in chains in the city that had killed her brother, and she did not beg it for pity, she handed it its indictment. And then they brought her before the governor, Ubayd Allah, the son of Ziyad, in his hall, swollen with his victory. And he looked at the woman whose entire family he had just destroyed, and he tried to wound her. How did you see, he asked her, what God did with your brother and your house? And my aunt gave the answer that I could not reach on the 10th night. She looked at the man who had taken everything from her, and she said, I saw nothing but beauty. She did not mean she did not see the horror. She had carried the horror in her own 2 hands. She meant that through it she had seen the one thing he could never reach. The covenant kept, the offering accepted, the witness that would outlast him and his whole empire. I was not there, but I remember the word my aunt gave the governor, and I will tell you the truth of it. It was not my own endurance that taught my voice how to go on after the trampling. It was her word. I saw nothing but beauty. The strength you hear returning to this voice tonight. I borrowed it. I borrowed it from my aunt. And then the long road to Damascus, into the very throne room of the empire. He had the head of my forefather brought before him on a tray, and he took a cane in his hand, and I have carried this for 12 centuries, and I will say it once and move on. He struck the teeth of that holy head, and he recited the poetry of his pagan grandfathers, and he said, before his whole court, that this was his revenge for the idolaters his family had lost 2 generations before. He confessed it in his own hall, drunk on his own victory. He confessed that he had killed the family of the prophet to avenge the enemies of the prophet. And my aunt rose a captive, the cloth taken from her head, exhausted past what a body should survive, surrounded by the entire power of the world, and she dismantled him where he sat. Do you imagine, she said, that because you have driven us as captives, we are despised before God and you are honored? Plot all you wish, by God, you will never erase our remembrance, nor put out our light, nor wash this shame from yourself. And then she named what he was, O son of the freed ones, the grandson of the pardoned, slaughtering the grandsons of the one who pardoned. She raised no sword, she raised his own lineage, and it cut him to the floor of his own court. And there was one more of us in that hall the empire had not counted, my grandfather Ali, the son of Husayn, the one survivor among the men, sick almost to death, bound in chains. And when the tyrant set a hired tongue upon the pulpit, my grandfather asked to climb that same pulpit, and what came out of him made the room weep. He did not argue. He simply told them who he was. I am the son of Mecca and Mina, he said. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. I am the son of the one slain at Karbala thirsty. The son of the one whose head was raised upon a spear. And when the tyrant, frightened of his own court, ordered the call to prayer to silence him, when the caller reached the words, I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God, my grandfather turned to him and asked before them all, this Muhammad, is he your grandfather or mine? There was no answer. There has never been an answer. And men stood and walked out of that hall rather than pray behind him. They had nothing. No army, no freedom, not even the veils on their heads. And with a clear voice and the truth, they brought a dynasty to the ground. That is what the witness after the witness did with nothing. I was not there, but I remember. And I remember that the road did not end in Damascus. It turned at last back toward the grave, toward the 40th day. And what was carried on that road is what we will walk together the nights ahead. The prayer my grandfather left for the guardians of every frontier when he could no longer raise a sword, and so raised a supplication. The smallest of the house, weeping in the dark of a ruin in Sham. The old companion of my grandfather, the prophet, blind and bent, who would set out to walk to my forefather's grave when his own feet could barely carry him. The first pilgrim, the first of the 20 million who walk every year still. And the reunion on the 40th day of the living and the dead in the same place again. The chain that my aunt opened in the market of Kufa has not closed, not in 12 centuries. It ran from her to my grandfather, from my grandfather to the scholars who guarded the words, from them to the reciter, from the reciter into the room where you are sitting, into you. You are the witness after the witness now. And And so I ask you the question I have asked at the close of every night. Only tonight I ask it the way the Empire, without knowing it, asked it of my aunt. They thought they were asking, where is the one you loved? Where is your brother? We have taken him. What do you have left? And she answered with the whole of her life, he is here. He is in every mouth that still says his name. He is in this room. He is in you. Where is your brother? He is here. He has always been here. And he's waiting for you to stand the way she stood.
So now we have a short supplication. In the name of God, the Lord of the martyrs and the truthful. Peace be upon Abel, the first witness of the earth, who would rather be killed than kill. Peace upon every soul in every age and every land who has ever been driven from their home only for saying our Lord is God. O God, we have nowhere to go but your door, and no one to ask but you, and no words except the ones you have placed on the tongues of your friends. O God, send your peace and your blessings upon your final messenger Muhammad, and upon his pure family and upon his righteous companions. And send your peace upon the prophets of every house, upon Adam, upon Noah, upon Abraham, upon Moses and Aaron, and Jesus the son of Mary, and upon every one of them whose name we know and whose name only you know. The chain of witness whose whole weight came to rest at last in the veins of Imam al-Husayn. O God, this is her night. Send your peace and our love and our grief upon our lady, said Zaynab. Peace and blessings be upon her. The daughter of Imam Ali, the partner of Imam al-Husayn. The one who watched from the mound and did not look away. The one who lifted the offering from the dust. The one who silenced a treacherous city in her chains. The one who stood unveiled in the throne room of the tyrant and would not be ashamed. The eye that saw nothing but beauty. The witness after the witness, who refused the mercy of death so that the dead could go on speaking. O God, teach us to stand where she stood. O God, send your peace upon our master Imam al-Husayn, the master of witnesses, and upon al-Abbas and Ali al-Akbar and Qasim, and the children of the household, and the suckling Ali al-Asghar, and upon every companion who fell on the field, the lamps that would not flicker. Peace and blessings be upon them all. O God, send your peace upon her nephew, our master, Ali, the son of Husayn, Zayn al-Abedeen. Peace and blessings be upon him, who held the line of guidance from a bed of chains, and whose prayers for the people of the frontiers we will take up tomorrow night, God willing. O God, send your peace upon our masters, all the Imams of guidance, Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, Imam Jawad, Imam al-Rida, Imam al-Kadhim, Imam al-Hadi, and Imam al-Askari. And God, the longer return is always to the chain that runs from Imam Husayn through the Imams of guidance to the Imam of our age. May our souls be his ransom, and may you, our beloved Lord, hasten his return. O God, and upon those of our own age who walked the road Our Lady opened, who carried the testimony in the open and never by the shadow, and were taken for it. In this Arbaeen, the first since the martyrdom of our beloved Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei on the 28th of February 2026, send your peace and blessings upon his pure soul, and welcome him into your nearness with your prophets and your martyrs. Send your peace upon Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who was promised the meeting and kept the appointment, and upon Sayyid Abbas al-Musawi and his wife Sayyid al-Siham and their little son Sayyid Hussein, who fell with him in one convoy, and upon Shaykh Raghib Harb, who taught the South the meaning of refusing the occupier's hand, and upon Haj Qasim Sulaimani and Haj Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who fell together under one strike, and upon Haj Imad Mughniya, who effaced his own name for 25 years so the cause could keep its face, and upon Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr and his sister, the martyr Sayyedah bint al-Huda, who went to the gallows of the tyrant of Iraq rather than be silent, and upon Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Hussain Fadlallah, and upon every scholar of guidance whom death has taken away from us, and upon Imam Khomeini, who lit the lamp in our own centuries. O God, may the mercy and peace of God rest upon their pure souls, and may you raise their stations and gather them with the ones that they loved and the ones we love. O God, send your peace upon the young men and the children of the resistance of every land, of Palestine and Lebanon and Iraq and Yemen and Syria and Bahrain and all across the world, who are being made witnesses in our own days while the world looks away. Even in the collective West, there are such. Peace be upon every child of Gaza pulled from the rubble. Peace be upon everyone whose name only you remember, and we know that you remember each and every one. O God, for those who still remain, we ask you for their protection. Preserve for us our beloved Imam Sayyid Mujtaba al-Husayn al-Khamenei, our Wali al-Faqih. O God, strengthen him, guide him, and keep him firm upon the path until the appointed hour. And protect, O God, every righteous scholar and every faithful leader of guidance who remains. Shield them from the daggers of the shadows and keep them standing in the light. O God, hasten the return of the Imam of our age. Make us of his helpers, his soldiers, and of those who, when he calls, are already standing exactly where his aunt left us. And as you say, O God, in the Quran, those who when a disaster strikes them say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we belong to God, and to him is our return. And we repeat your promise, an eternal promise for the patient and a warning for the wrongdoers. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. And those who do wrong will come to know to what a bitter end they will be returned. And we add from the depths of everything that we have learnt tonight, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. God is sufficient for us, and he is the best of guardians. Amen, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen, O most merciful of the merciful. And our final call is that all praise belong to God, the Lord of the worlds, and may his peace and blessings be upon Muhammad and his pure household. وآخر الدعوان الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
We turn now to Nohe. For those joining us for the first time, a Nohe is an elegy, mourning poetry, recited and sung in lament for Imam Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him and the family and the companions of Karbala. It is grief given a voice and love given a rhythm, and it is meant to be shared. So please join in the recitation and in the beating of the chest as your heart moves you. Tonight's Nohe is Ya Zaynab.
Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. See the path in the dust, dragged across the sand, burning the searing heat, walking hand in hand. Shackled by heavy chain, woman and child, wounded and traumatized, tortured and defiled, dragged from place to place. Their aim was to disgrace. People jeered and stared, curses they declared, curses they declared, curses they declared. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Midst the crowd, shadow-like, hearing what they say, cheering and mockingly, children laugh and play. Know they not who it is midst this caravan? Guardianless, burdened, displayed before all Sham. Cry they, alas, where is Abbas? Cry they, alas, where is Abbas? Where is Abbas? Where is Abbas? Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the meek, mother of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Zaynab now enters the court of Yazid. Demons cry out his name, praising all his deeds. Say they see what Allah's done to your Husayn. Mock Zaynab boastfully, cursed her blessed name. Laughing and jeering at Zayn al-Abedeen. Shadowy witnesses weeping at the scene. What is in their hearts? Faith it plays no part. Evilness and sin, all that is within. Betrayed they Zaynab, betrayed they Zaynab. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Bloody and beaten, chains tear at their flesh, wounds that will never heal, witness their distress. Step forward, Ali, Zayn al-Abedeen, cries out, oh, gaze at me, what face have you seen? Do you not recognize the son of Fatima? From the first of the first, holy Mustafa. See no resemblance to the face of Murtada. I am the son of Makkah and Mina. See you, the offspring of Zamzam and Safa, son of sweet Husayn, slaughtered on that plain. Naught but blood and sand on your governor's hands. Curse them, Yazid, cursed than Yazid. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Midst all the blood and dust, sorrow and the jeers, silence for then descends the fragrance of her tears. Faces contorted as on the judgment day, shamelessly witnessing evil on display. Zaynab cries out, oh, reflect on all your deeds. Arrogant, murderous, in who will you plead? A prophet set men free, justice he decreed. Allah may delay, but surely he repay. Trust in Allah, trust in Allah. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Son of the freed ones, you swagger without shame. You cover your women, but the prophets you defame. You've ordered the torment of the holy and the chaste, and at Karbala lie the bodies of the blessed. You pulled your own skin and you cut off your own flesh. For I see the victory of the righteous and oppressed. Though misery abound, victory can be found. Joy for the serene, beauty's all I've seen. For holy Ashura, alhamdulillah. For holy Ashura, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, guardian of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Zaynab, witness to the message of Tabyin, clarifies the battle against the vile mustakbirin, the flag of resistance, the cloak of al-Kisar. Zaynab, she leads the charge, the scream from Ashura. Though heads may be severed and bodies torn apart, Children lay tortured, oh, witness Karbala. Yet I see in the distance a warrior afar, a grandson of eternity, the Hujjah of Allah. He'll cast off all the change, avenger of al-Husayn. Our tears must now be swords to taste this blessed reward. For beauty to be seen, we must be warriors of Tableen, Mujahid of Tableen, Mujahid of Tableen. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the weak, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy Zaynab. Ya Zaynab, voice of the oppressed. Ya Zaynab, champion of the blessed, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek, guardian of the weak, mother of the meek. Holy Zaynab, holy
We now come to Ziyarat Arbaeen. A ziyarah is a visitation, a way of standing before the Imam across all distance and all time, greeting him and renewing our pledge to him. Ziyarat Arbaeen is the visitation of the 40th day, taught to us by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him. The very words the believer says at the grave when, as the Imam puts it, the day has risen high. You will hear it in a form we've prepared with great care, rendered poetically into English with its full meaning kept intact, so that every word can be understood. Listen for its ending, which is unlike Ziyarat Ashura's. It does not close in grief, but in a pledge. Our help is made ready for you until God gives you His leave. So, with you and never with your enemy. If you wish to understand more fully what this ziyarah is and who is named within it, we've prepared a short companion piece on our website. The link is in the description. Please stand or sit with reverence.
Peace be upon the friend of God and his beloved. Peace be upon the intimate of God and his chosen one. Peace be upon the pure one of God and the son of his pure one. Peace be upon Husayn, the wronged, the witness slain. Peace be upon the captive of sorrows, the one killed amid a world of tears. O God, we bear witness that he is your friend, and the son of your friend, your chosen, and the son of your chosen, the one who won through by your honoring of him. You ennobled him with witness, you favored him with felicity, you chose him for the purity of his birth. You made him a master among masters, a leader among leaders, a defender among defenders. You gave into his hands the inheritance of the prophets and set him a proof over your creation, among the appointed heirs. So he left no excuse unanswered in his calling. He gave every counsel he could give, and he poured out his very lifeblood in your cause to draw your servants back out of ignorance and out of the bewilderment of going astray. And there banded against him the one whom this world deceived, who sold his own portion for the meanest, basest price, and bartered away his hereafter for the cheapest coin, who grew arrogant and threw himself away in his own appetite, who angered you and angered your prophet, and who obeyed from among your servants the people of discord and hypocrisy, the bearers of sin, who had earned the fire. So we strove against them for your sake, patient, seeking only your reckoning, until his blood was poured out in obedience to you, and all that he held sacred was violated. O God, let your mercy be far from them, a heavy, bitter distance, and punish them with a punishment that gives no rest. Peace be upon you, O Son of the Messenger of God. Peace be upon you, O Son of the Master of the appointed heirs.
We bear witness
that you were the trust of God and the Son of his trust. You lived in felicity, you passed unpraised, and you died, mourned by too few, wronged, a witness. We bear witness that God will bring to pass what he promised you, that he will destroy the one who abandoned you and punish the one who killed you. And we bear witness that you kept faith with the covenant of God and struggled in his path until the certainty came upon you. So may the mercy of God be far from the one who killed you, and may the mercy of God be far from the one who wronged you, and may the mercy of God be far from a people who heard of it and were content.
O God,
we call you to witness. That we are the friends of whoever befriends him, and the enemies of whoever shows him enmity by our fathers and our mothers. For you, O Son of the Messenger of God. We bear witness that you were a light in the exalted loins and the purified wombs. The age of ignorance never defiled you with its filth, nor could its darkest garments ever be laid upon you.
we bear witness
that you are one of the pillars of the faith, one of the supports of the Muslims, and a stronghold of the believers. And that you are the Imam, upright, God-fearing, well-pleasing, pure, the guide, the rightly guided. And that the Imams from your line are the word of God consciousness, the banners of guidance, the firm handhold that does not break, and the proof of God over the people of this world. And we bear witness that we believe in you and are certain of your return, firm in the laws of our faith and in how our deeds will end. Our hearts are at peace with your hearts. Our affair follows your affair. And our help is made ready for you until God gives you his leave. So, with you, and never with your enemy. The blessings of God be upon you all, upon your souls and upon your bodies, upon the one present and the one absent, upon what is seen of you and what is hidden.
Amen, O Lord of the worlds.
And so we close the first night of the road to Arbaeen. Thank you, every one of you, for returning to walk it with us, and for your attention and your tears. And before we make our closing prayer, if tonight reached you, please do subscribe, like, and share this premiere, not for our sake, but so that the witness of Sayyedah Zaynab, peace and blessings be upon her, reaches one more heart through you. May God accept the gathering from us. May he keep us amongst those who carry the testimony onward when others fall silent. And may God protect, guide, and strengthen our Wali al-Faqih, Imam Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei. May God protect him until the appointed hour. For 10 nights we carried one question, and we do not put it down now. Sayyedah Zaynab carried her brother's testimony out of the field because she would not leave him unanswered. So we ask it again tonight. Where is your brother? Good night, and may God keep you.